there are different aspects of ourselves that seem to be working in contradiction to each other, which means we proclaim something on the surface. I want this, I want that, I want X, I want B, but then we don't work towards it. And we wonder why. We get frustrated with ourselves, we get disappointed, we fall into despair, we fall into rumination. So we start to think about how we're not good enough and why we're not moving fast enough, why it is that it seems like other people are ahead of us in whatever specific area that we want to pursue or domain we think that we should be pursuing. And that really brings us down even further. And we're constantly discouraged. And the reason we're always discouraged is because we're always looking to the external world to tell us specifically what it is that we want. And that's why we have this other part of us that doesn't work towards whatever we say or what we think. That happens for two reasons. Number one, because whatever we're proclaiming that we want on the surface, so what we say we want is not what we actually want. It's just something that is superficial, that's on the surface, that is somehow fulfilling or establishing a certain set of psychological needs that we think we need to grasp onto. And so we end up pursuing it or pursuing it half-heartedly, and either we don't attain it or we attain it to some degree and it doesn't do anything for us. And then we wonder why we're still unhappy. The second component of not pursuing what it is that we say that we want is because we are more comfortable in our current situation than we would be had we began pursuing thing that is not in the present. So what I'm trying to say is whatever is happening currently in our lives is filling some set of needs. Typically, these needs are physical needs, psychological needs. We're comfortable. So it's like we've got our security blanket on, right? We've got a security blanket on and we feel safe where we are. We feel safe where we are. We're not dying. We're surviving. Everything is not great. It's not bad. But because we don't have any sense of aliveness, any sense of fulfillment, we kind of stay in this gray zone. And not only do we stay in this gray zone, but we feel empty. We feel empty because we don't know ourselves, and we're also not doing anything with ourselves. And the reason we're not doing anything with ourselves is because we're comfortable to a certain degree where we are, knowing that whatever we pursue in the future is going to be difficult, it's going to be challenging, we are going to fail, we are going to make mistakes. And so what we do is we start to see ourselves through other people's eyes. This is probably one of the biggest problems in society, which is seeing ourselves through the eyes of other human beings. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, this is something that we need to do. And the reason we need to do it is because we have to be able to have checks and balances and not just live in our own echo chamber, believing that we're right. So having this feeling of righteousness, of pride, and acting in accordance with this feedback loop that we're going through in our own minds. And so what's happening is, instead of reflecting on ourselves in a more spiritual sense, in the sense that maybe God would reflect on us or the way God would regard us, we start to see ourselves through the eyes of other people, and other people are flawed. Other people make mistakes. We all make the same mistakes. We all make the same mistakes. We all fall into anger. We all fall into despair. We all fall into things like pride and lust and greed. And we don't realize that if we continue to operate within the culture, from the culture's perspective, as if we are trying to assimilate ourselves fully to what we see, we will always be empty. We will always feel empty inside, because truly, really and truly, that's not your divine calling. Your divine calling is probably not to do what every single other person that you see in your world is doing. And especially if it feels to you that it's empty. Maybe it's going to give you something on the surface, like validation, like somebody congratulating you for something, liking you for something. So we're being validated by things that have nothing to do with who we are truly at the deepest level. That's why it remains unfulfilling. That's why if you see a lot of the the content now on the internet, and for quite some time, you see that everything is manufactured, is perfectly tailored to elicit a specific response. And the person who's manufacturing the content or the information knows that that's what they're doing. That's why it's never fulfilling, because they're never putting their selves out there. They're never putting themselves on the line authentically and genuinely. They're just playing the game that everybody else is playing. So what's really important is for you to not play everybody else's game. Of course, to a certain degree, we're going to have to live in the world and make ends meet and make sure that we're providing financially for ourselves, for our families, etc. So there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with working and working honestly with integrity to do something to improve our current situation. But at the end of the day, we need to have a larger vision. We need to have a purpose, a larger purpose that we're going to be working towards, knowing that we're going to stumble along the way, knowing that we're going to take many detours, and that's completely fine. We can take a lot of detours. We don't have to get there immediately in one step. And the more we think that we need to do it in the next month, in the next 6 months, in the next year, the more anxiety that's going to produce. So what's really important is knowing specifically what kind of impact you want to have. What is your personal mission statement, if you will? And to share mine, it's extremely long, but the crux of my mission statement is that I want to be relied upon by as many people as possible, physically, financially, emotionally, spiritually. And in order for me to do that, I have to become a person who is worthy of being relied upon by other people. So which means that I need to transform. I need to change in specific ways, which means becoming virtuous. So what we're doing instead of pursuing a specific thing in the world is we're pursuing virtues. So we want to be filled with what? Discipline, integrity. We want to be loyal, and we want to have qualities, characteristics that are admirable, not necessarily from other people's eyes, but from the eyes of God. From the eyes of God. What would God want from you? If God was all-knowing, all-loving, and really and truly, God cared for you, and God listened to you. When you would pray, you knew that you were praying to someone. It was a personal relationship that you had. If we have all of the opportunities that we have, then all we have to realize is really and truly you are cared for. You're cared for because you're created. You didn't choose to be here. None of us chose to be here. We're just here. And of course, it could be really disheartening sometimes when we hear this about people talking about gratitude and how we should be grateful, and it makes us feel even more disappointed with ourselves knowing that we're not grateful. And then we beat ourselves up even further knowing that we're not grateful. But if you do that, just know that you're just like me, you're just like everybody else. That's completely normal. So what's abnormal is having the delusional perspective of who you are and not really reflecting on whatever emotions you're going through as signals for you to do what? To reorient yourself, reorient your mind, reorient your heart. Because when you are going through this experience of negativity, any experience that you're going through, despair, loneliness, questioning, confusion, numbness, right? All of these experiences that we all go through, that I've went through, it's important to realize that these are signals. It's not so much that we need to act from that place, because what happens is if you're acting out of pure excitement, anticipation, and let's say, for example, you're in the world and you're in a setting where there's going to be a group of people who perhaps are going to be engaging in some behavior that is not going to be productive for you. It's not going to be something that you want to do, but you just fall into that. If you're feeling excitement and anticipation, you're just going to go along with the flow. Conversely, if you're feeling sad or anxious or angry, you might respond from that state. And that state, responding from that state, is also going to produce its own consequences. So we want to get to a place of equanimity, knowing that whatever we're experiencing is normal, which means when I say normal, I mean everybody experiences the same things. We all experience the same emotions, and realizing that instead of reacting in accordance with your emotions, write out virtues, the characteristics, the things that you want to embody, and ask yourself, what would I need to do every day in order for me to make progress towards these virtues, towards these characteristics. Because as we do that, relating to what I said at the very beginning, that's when we start to discover who we are, number one, and then what it is that we want later. Because if you think you know what you want now, I guarantee you it's going to change, especially if you haven't built your character, especially if you haven't begun to build virtues or move towards virtues, especially if you haven't matured emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, especially if you haven't lived some years and developed some wisdom and some knowledge. It's going to be very difficult for you to know that what it is that you want is what you actually want, what your soul wants. And the way for you to realize this is, and for you to be discerning as far as what it is truly that you want, is you're going to realize, number one, you're more comfortable right now where you are than where you're going, because where you're going is unknown, it's uncertain. And so that's uncomfortable, right? And that's normal. Number two is what you're saying that you want is not what you actually want. So what you want is something that you're thinking about on a surface level, on a societal, cultural level. So you're seeing something, some image flash on your screen or something like that, or you're seeing some talking head living a certain life, and now you're like, that's what I want. Well, you probably want something deeper. I'm assuming that you do want something deeper, especially if you're watching this video. So realize that, again, if you're not pursuing what you want, that's normal for those two reasons. So what do you have to do? Instead, focus on building your character, building your virtues, doing things on a daily basis that actually help you develop into the person who can do the things that you see yourself doing or that you would like to do. For example, building a family, being relied upon by as many people as possible. Or let's say, for example, if you want to build a cabin, you want to build a house in the woods. Well, what do you have to do? You have to acquire some skills. So start acquiring those skills. Let's say that's a life goal that you have, and it's something that you want, and what you want is good, right? Because you're building something with your hands, as an example. So the best place to start is, instead of thinking, well, this is something that I want to do when I retire or in 20 years, start learning how to do it. Maybe look at some areas near where you live or somewhere else where you could possibly build this house, build this cabin that you're envisioning. Maybe plan it out and start developing yourself. So don't just do it in theory. Don't just do things in your imagination, because those things are not tangible. Do things to develop yourself so you can move a little bit closer to that goal on a regular basis. So something that's very common that I talk a lot about is having daily habits. So waking up early, exercising, eating healthy, so you're taking care of your temple. And the more you take care of your temple physically, right, your body, the more you're going to be able to, the better you're going to be able to operate mentally, psychologically, even spiritually. Because think about it like this. So let's say you wake up super late at noon, and then you start your morning with some donuts. You can imagine how the next few hours of your day is going to go if that's how you start your day. So it's not really that surprising, and it's not something that takes a very, very long time. Another thing that I advocate for, oftentimes you'll see, is going to be journaling, self-reflection, contemplating. So basically you're thinking about your life, not using a specific filter that judges you, right? But really that points out specifically what are the things that you're doing that are helpful? What are the things that you're doing that are not helpful? So what are the temptations that you find yourself succumbing to on a regular basis? And try very slowly to work against succumbing to those temptations, starting to remove the vices. Oftentimes what you'll hear me say is, instead of trying to pick up 3 new habits, that's going to be very difficult because you have a limited number of hours in a day. So what might be more productive to start would be to remove some of the habits that you want to remove, that you know that are not good for you. And those are going to be evident to you. You're going to see those in you immediately. So you're going to say, okay, how could I work on these things? And you're not going to get it right. There's going to be, and I keep noticing this, not only in myself, but in other people, is that we never get it fully right. We never get it perfect. So stop trying to be perfect, just make progress. Realize that suffering is part of the journey. We're not going to get rid of it. We're going to feel negative emotions. What matters is not so much that we feel them, but what we do as a consequence of feeling those negative emotions. So we continue to work, right? We reorient our minds, reorient our hearts, and then we continue to work with the right intention. Right? What is the right intention? The right intention is knowing that you are building yourself so that you can be good for your family, for your community, for the larger community. and all the goals that you would like to accomplish in life. For example, maybe doing something that's productive for other people, getting involved in some organization, nonprofit organization, being able to have some finances so that you can donate to specific causes, building yourself so you can find the partner that you want to end up with, and you can have a family with this person, and then you can pursue together. So these are the things that are going to be very meaningful, you're going to find in your life. And in order for us to move towards those goals, it's really important to start from today, to start from right now, to find out what are the specific qualities, virtues, characteristics to develop via certain habits that we can start building, while slowly eliminating the temptations, or we can't eliminate the temptations, but at least eliminate our succumbing, right? So our giving in to those temptations and to the vices. And as we start to separate from the vices and we start to add good things, we're going to start to notice a lot of progress in our lives. And that is going to give you more clarity as far as what you want. And you're going to have a deeper sense of that reality. So I hope you take this with you and you found some value in this. And until next time, I will see you soon.